speech roundtable, and we've had absolutely fantastic participation from everybody, and I truly believe we're moving the needle. Let me just start with a few housekeeping details. Then what I'd like to do is then briefly, everybody go around and introduce themselves. So this is not the time to talk, it's just the time to introduce yourself. Then I'm going to have the members speak for 3 minutes, and then everybody, and we're going to run a time clock, just like I ran my surgical meetings. We're going to do 4 minutes for everybody, and then that gives us time, hopefully at the end, still be able to talk, to have some good conversations, because a lot of it comes from those type of things. So, I want to first of all thank my staff, Alex, Melissa, Libby, all my staff for helping do this, put this together. It's really, I think, a wonderful, wonderful thing, given the climate that we're in right now. But let me quickly introduce, have each of the members just introduce themselves, just where they're from, and then we'll go over.
Yeah, Bob Adler, I represent Missouri State.
Greg Murphy, North Carolina 3rd, in my 3rd and a half term. Red shirt sophomore, red shirt junior.
Brody Owens, Utah.
Randy Tyne, I'm one of the newest congressmen, just got elected April 1st. It wasn't a joke, from the 6th Congressional District of Florida.
Great. Jonathan, if you could introduce yourself. And again, just brief introductions, and we'll get into the program.
Sure, I'm Jonathan Illusion, Deputy Chief of Staff for Strategy at the Department of Education. I ran the transition. Prior to that, I was the Higher Ed Reform Director at the FBI. Former college professor, was on board for a while. Both of you.
That's great. Thank you. Tom, I'm going to have you guys do this one if it's okay.
Sure.
Tom Neal, the UVA alumnus, co-founder of the Study Council, and co-chair of the African Teaching Reform.
And just by the way, if you want to use, if we can, use the microphone, it's just, well, this is on all the major networks, including the Cartoon Network. So just so folks can hear it.
It should be green.
It should be red.
Oh, there we go. Now it's right. Okay. Hi, good morning. Angela Smith, Princetonians for Free Speech, Executive Director, founded in 2021, and it's very much an honor and a privilege to be here.
Gabby Manage, Capitol Hill Outreach Director, Capitol Hill Outreach Director in the Americas Foundation. Happy to be here today.
Thank you for inviting me to speak today. My name is Courtney Graves, and I'm a senior at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, studying political science and economics, and I also serve as the chairwoman of the ASCO.
Thanks again for organizing this roundtable, Congressman. My name is Steve McGuire. I'm the Paul and Karen Leakey Fellow at Campus Freedom at the American Council of Seasoned Alumni, or ACTA for short.
Good morning. My name is Alfonso Aguilar. I'm the Senior Director of Government Affairs at Defending Education. We're a national organization that fights against DEI and other extreme ideologies in K through 12 and on college campuses. We do it through investigations and reports, exposing illicit practices and policies, strategic litigation, and policy advocacy at the federal and state level.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm John Craig from Davidson. I'm the former founding chairman of Davidsonians for Freedom of Thought and Discourse. Congressman Murphy played a key role in founding that organization. Great to be here. Thank you for doing this evening.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name is Richard Kendricks. I am the current chair of Davidsonians for Freedom of Thought and Discourse, Davidson Council.
Good morning. My name is Noah Durham. I'm the Gulf Regional Manager for Turning Point USA. Just thank you so much for this invitation. We're really looking forward to having a good discussion today.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Macy Gunnell, and I come to you today as a Turning Point USA chapter leader. I'm a senior at St. Mary's College, and I serve as the president of our chapter, which was finally approved in October after 4 years of progressive censorship. So, looking forward to pitching my personal experience in this discussion.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all. Let me, I'll give a few remarks and then I'll turn it over to Burgess. I unfortunately am going to have to leave a little after 9 o'clock. We're trying to put together a healthcare package and I'm working with the speaker staff and the speaker and trying to do that. We'll make sure things are out. So, I'm a graduate, as John pointed out, from Davidson College many years ago, where at the time when I was there, there was political proclivity. leanings, insinuations, etc., of any professor or of anybody in the administration. You knew your grade was not dependent upon what you said. It was more how you said it and the content rather than which political party that you belong to. Sadly enough, and I'll just say the institution under the last president began becoming more and more progressive, pushing off the wonderful world of free speech and making things more cloistered, more protective. You had to watch what you say, not only because you would lose friends, be ousted, but your grades may even be affected. And I know that for a fact because when I was on the board there, I had several students reach out to me, several students and professors reach out to me with all confidentiality about what was going on at the institution under the president's leadership at that time, which was very, very challenging. And that, I believe, was the genesis, the impetus for a lot of what has happened at our alma mater, at that school. Whether it's changed or not, we'll see. I think that still remains to be seen. Sadly enough, free speech is under attack. 93 days ago, we had an assassination on TV of a gentleman, a young man that was literally trying to do what we're trying to do in a much more outstanding manner. He was assassinated because he wanted free speech. First of all, you remember times in your lives about when things happen. I'll never forget where I was when I was when I saw this. It literally changed the framework. The real question is, what is going to become of this? Are we learning? Are we gaining more? It'll be interesting to hear some of the comments today. Are we making a difference now to bring conversations back to campuses? I think we are. I think we're making a difference. I think we're pulling back the envelope. It's very, very hard because so many liberal professors, liberal administrators want to continue to protect their ability to use their positions of authority, which is what they're doing. This is what they have done. And so I thank you all for doing this today. I look for a very robust discussion. I have some wonderful colleagues here to help monitor this. But I thank you all personally for all the hard work that you did. And I'll turn it over to Burgess. I don't know if you guys know this, but this guy's a Super Bowl champion in the ring. But he's one of my best buddies up here in London. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Greg. This is an honor to be here, first of all. Let me just start by saying I went to the University of Miami in my college for not too many colleges were recruiting me out of my senior year. One of I was blessed to be raised during a time where we were becoming more Brooklyn. We were kind of going through the process of realizing the heart and soul of our nation was looking at different inside out and outside in the 60s. I was the third black to get an scholarship at the University of Miami. We've come a long way from there. And we had to make sure we never ever go back. And that's the way evil never sleeps. That's what we always have to remember. That sometimes we kind of get lost in our bubble of freedom and opportunity and think about raising our kids, having our businesses, doing the things that we dream about, and we forget that evil never sleeps. It's on our doorsteps every single day. And sadly, we have to come up to these situations like October 7th or Charlie Kirk's assassination to finally realize that, we have to be engaged. So I appreciate, first of all, everyone around this table because you're taking your time to understand this is important. This is imperative for our country to survive. I appreciate young people that are realizing it is truly your future that we're fighting for. And we're going to do our part, but the young people have to stand up like they did back in my day. I remember 13 years old, standing in line and demonstrating in front of Florida State Theater. But I was with college kids, black college kids, that were taking part in that process. They were taking their time out, being very courageous because it was all nonviolent. And I will always remember that, how young people stood up to make the major difference. So thank you for doing that. This is a very important conversation we're having here. I'm just so thankful to be part of a group of men and women who truly see it at this time, and we're doing our part here in Congress to make sure we get this right. So thanks so much, and I look forward to the conversation we're going to have today.
Great. Thank you. Dr. Under.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Murphy. Well, I'm excited to be here today. Like Dr. Murphy, I'm a physician. I did all my training at the Washington U School of Medicine in St. Louis, Missouri, undergrad, med school, residency, fellowship.
But then he went insane, and he got a law degree.
That's a long story. We'll get into that later. That's some other time. But, you know, it is troubling to see the erosion of free speech in healthcare here. This one. And, you know, I think you would think that the sciences, whether it be the hard sciences like engineering, math, physics, or the biological sciences like medicine, that we would have a certain respect for truth and open inquiry. For one thing, we believe in truth. If your hemoglobin is 15, well, that's a fact. It's not about narrative. It's not some social construct. It's a fact. But also the very scientific method that has benefited healthcare over the centuries is one of humility and open dialogue. The scientific method consists of making observations and then formulating a hypothesis and then doing the experiment to test the hypothesis, which in turn is an observation, and continue because there is no the science, as Dr. Fauci called himself. It's a method. So we have to have medicine, science depends on open inquiry and free discussion. But I think too many times now, I think we see that medical training, medical students, even some of our medical journals start to look at clinical problems through a social justice lens. Essentially cultural Marxist idea that some people are inherently privileged and are therefore oppressors, and then others are the oppressed, and one has to remedy those injustices. And of course, sometimes it becomes downright absurd, starting to deny that certain people of certain races are more predisposed to this or that disease than others, or to predispose that. To assume that obesity isn't a health problem, it's some sort of your whatever weight gravityist or something. If you advise your patients to lose weight, or of course, most absurd of all, that gender identity can override biological sex. And I hate to say, in the deep red state of Missouri, some medical schools, maybe most medical schools, are requiring applicants to do things like explain how they contribute to diversity and how they will, quote, foster an inclusive learning environment. Unfortunately, inclusive means those who differ from the established leftist orthodoxy need not apply. One medical school showed a video, what doctors should know about gender identity, and you can imagine what that was all about. So these coercive practices have no place I think in higher education, period, much less in medicine. I think our society is going to suffer, our patients are going to suffer, certainly the profession that I've worked in for so long will suffer. Free speech is not optional. So I look forward to today's discussion. Thanks for having me, Dr. Murphy.
Thank you. Randy.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here with all of you today. I approach this discussion from an interesting perspective. I have a son that's applying to college right now, and he's particularly interested in going to the college that I went to 35 years ago, which I think was on the leading edge of all of these issues. I went to Harvard. Maybe they want to censor me right now. And many of the things that have become widespread today were the case back then. I almost got kicked out twice, never for bad behavior. When I was a freshman, I wouldn't pretend that I was gay. I kid you not. And when I was a junior, I failed a class because the professor did not think that the position that I was putting out was one that should be said. One that should be said. And by the way, at Harvard, if you fail a class, you get invited to take a semester to think about your life. In both cases, I was able to resolve it, and it didn't end up happening, but they tried. And what I took away from this, interestingly, it made me much stronger in my political views. I became more conservative, not less. I used to say a conservative at a place like Harvard, they put you on an anvil and they beat you. They either beat it out of you or they beat it into you. You came out sharply tempered steel. I came out the latter. But what I found was this predilection against free speech made everyone worse off, including the left. because it allowed them to be lazy in the advocacy of their own arguments. What I would say is, if you're so right, then why are you afraid to debate me? Well, now I have to deal with this myself. I have a son who's applying to college, and we'll see where he gets in and where he wants to go. And I have inculcated in him this view that you lean into the debate, you lean into the fight, and that's what, all right, I'm going to turn this damn thing off. You lean into the debate, and that's what you actually, I'm loud enough, I don't need a microphone. You lean into the fight, and that's what you do. But I also think that we have to make sure we do not go too far. Because now we are seeing free speech absolutists say that criticism of speech is in and itself a desire to shut it down. And we're the ones who've propagated for decades that the truth matters and facts matter, and you don't get to have your own absolute set of facts. And now we sometimes see those on our side put forth in the name of free speech statements that are simply untrue and actually do real cause to what we care about, which is the idea that people be able to go to college campuses and say what they want. So I think we have to be careful. I think we have to demand that we have the free exchange of ideas, but we also have to be clear that the criticism of ideas is not in and of itself a desire to cancel said speech. And so when people go up and they say Hitler is good, we have to be okay with saying, that's bad. And saying that is bad does not mean that we don't believe in free speech. It just means that we call out stupid people, whether they're on the right or whether they are on the left. And that is what will make the marketplace of ideas for everyone better for my son, no matter where he chooses to go to school next year. So I really appreciate all of you being here. I look forward to hearing your perspective as we go around the table and hearing everybody's questions.
Great. Thanks, guys. Appreciate y'all coming and helping out with this. Tom, we're going to start with you. We'll tell you everybody gets 4 minutes, and at 3 minutes and 30 seconds, I'll start tapping, or I'll just give you a little warning.
Before I start, Dr. Honor, I identify as a male.
There you go.
All right.
Hasn't changed. Although I've co-founded Jefferson Council, I'm now the chair of ASSA. My remarks are really going to address that. Let me read the mission statement. Preserving the truth in American higher education by equipping alumni to promote free speech, academic freedom, and viewpoint diversity at their alma maters. The founding 5 chapters were Cornell, Davidson, Princeton, UVA, and Washington Lee. And we now have 27 chapters, many of whom are represented by participants today, including Harvard, by the way.
How you doing there?
Great. John Evangelikos is doing a great job. Our primary goal is to get volunteer alumni groups any way that we can, have them be active, but let them do the tactical work. We don't dictate what they do. We help them organize. Each chapter effectuates a return to true intellectual diversity in American higher ed. They face different challenges, and we do our best to really complement and support them. We will intervene wherever appropriate to directly assist ASSA chapters when faculty or students are persecuted for expressing viewpoints, to your point, that are contrary to the prevailing leftist heterodoxy that currently dominates our institutions of higher learning. I have examples, but I'll save them for the Q&A. I don't want to go on. But some pretty chilling ones, by the way. What we are not, even though we're categorized as this, is a group of disgruntled older alumni seeking to return our alma maters to the good old days. Rather, we insist they no longer be run by zealots who disdain encouraging multiple viewpoints and return to institutions of higher learning that, to quote America's and my alma mater's UVA founding father, Thomas Jefferson, are not afraid to follow the truth wherever it may lead. ASSA is a boots-on-the-ground assemblage of alumni committed to effectuating true academic reform. We are not an intellectual debating society. I'll leave it there, and I'll go into the specific anecdotes later.
You got 2 minutes if you want.
Okay, well, I'll give you a couple then. One of the things we're most proud of, one of the founding chapters, and I'll leave the university out of it for confidentiality, but one of our founding chapters in the Midwest, we were told by the founding person that she was denied tenure, and it was purely for ideological reasons. She's from Central America. She's a very devout Christian, and she refused to sign the DEI, which included gender identity and all the other stuff. She got denied. She notified us. FIRE got involved. FAIR, if you're familiar with them, the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism, and we got involved. I wrote it as a chairman of ASSA. We don't sue. FAIR threatened to sue. And it got appealed to the president, and she got her tenure. And this was so bad, she was not only denied tenure at the initial pass, she was openly ridiculed in the class. Professors would go into her class, mock her, in front of the students. I mean, it was horrific. She's still experiencing some of that, but we're there to support her. There's a public. The next one is a private school. Again, I won't mention it, but all of these schools have these anonymous ID things, where you can report
Maxim.
This kid was accused of racism. Nothing she said was ever racist. We got involved. Again, fire got involved, and we got her off the hook. And then just real quickly, we didn't have a direct hand in this because we got to be very careful. We provided a lot of data to the alumni of 2 universities, one of which I will say was mine, UVA. Horrific things going on, and the president's resigned under pressure. So UVA, a lot of publicity about that has been the DOJ, and that's very legitimate. Just trust me, there's a heck of a lot more going on at UVA besides not adhering to DEI. And I'll save the last 2, which are students, until the Q&A. But
great.
As a dad, what he did to 2 students, if he'd done that to my daughter, I'd probably be in jail. So, go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. I hope at some point we get into talking about the Maxian system and the reporting systems, because this is Big Brother if there's anything on campuses. So, thank you, Angela.
Thank you. I'm with Princetonians for Free Speech. So we are an alumni advocacy group. We are defending and restoring a culture of free speech, academic freedom, and viewpoint diversity, not only at Princeton, but beyond. We were involved in the founding of AFSA, Eddie Engling, our founder there. And we like to be a model for what other institutions can look like. And we do this through 3 main points. First of all, PFS is truly nonpartisan. We defend free speech for all, providing practical and moral support to not only students, faculty, and alumni when their free speech rights are threatened at Princeton. A quick example, last April, there was the former Israeli Prime Minister who came to campus. It was the largest disruption in Princeton's history. There was shouting down, a fire alarm was pulled, people were told to evacuate, the event did not go on as planned. So we jumped in with advisory council to the students in the student groups affected. We had wrote letters to the administration too, as a matter of fact. And as a result of our efforts, clearer time, place, and manner restrictions were enacted. So that's one very specific but tangible example of how PFS helps on campus, boots on the ground. And we regularly partner with a number of Princetonian groups, student groups of all political persuasions and so on and so forth. We have student interns that we support in that way, and funding events in that way. We are the only independent alumni group holding Princeton accountable for issues on free speech, academic freedom, and viewpoint diversity. We're the only organization with alumni and friends. We built a 16,000 email subscriber list, the vast majority of whom are alumni, that we intend to activate and mobilize on these causes. And we will use them and have used them to motivate the university to make specific actions. Not only is that one event that I mentioned, but we have a top 10 list of recommendations, some of which have been enacted already on behalf of the university. So we're encouraging them, for example, to commit to institutional neutrality. That's not something that's been done yet, but that's something that we recommend through our top 10. Other top 10 actions that have already been taken, including eliminating use of mandatory DEI statements in faculty hiring, and we were able to bring comprehensive instruction on free speech to student freshman programming orientation. That was not happening before the involvement of PFS and students. And then thirdly, I'd like to emphasize that although we are Princetonians for free speech, we are much larger than that, at least we like to think so, being involved in AFSA and ACTA and some other groups in the spirit of this movement here. We consistently report on both Princeton and national free speech news. Our website is a repository, 900, maybe over 1,000 articles now, which we're in the process of organizing on all these free speech issues. And it includes our own original commentary as well as curated content from others who are relevant and important in the space. And as I mentioned, we've already built an enormous list of email subscribers. This time last year, we had about 1,400 on our email list. Now we have 16,000, and I can share more about how that occurred. But we're very proud of that. These are people who want to stay informed and engaged. They've opted in to receive our communications, so we know that they're interested in these matters. We're not just blasting and spamming anybody out there. And we know that alumni voices on policy matters will help us put pressure on the administration to continue to make changes. So awareness fuels momentum, and thank you for support.
That's great. Actually, I think you bring up a very, very salient point about how little the alumni sometimes know what is going back on campus. And Tom, to your point, it's not just a bunch of old stodgy alumni wanting to return to the old days. We want to return to balance.
Yeah, exactly.
Return to balance. So, thank you, Gabby.
Well, thank you again for the opportunity to speak today. I want to use my time to highlight what Young America's Foundation is seeing on campuses nationwide, both through our student network and through our growing portfolio of legal actions. The trends are unmistakable, and they point to a systemic problem that continues to escalate. First, I want to begin with an issue that has become a top priority for YAF, the federal rule routinely invoked to justify DEI mandates across federal programs, commonly referred to as Section 8A. As many of you know, this rule has been stretched far beyond its original purpose. Agencies and universities alike rely on it to embed DEI requirements deep into grant making, hiring practices, and program eligibility. YAF recently filed a lawsuit challenging how this rule is being used because its reinterpretation has effectively turned the benign, socially disadvantaged metric into a federally incentivized ideological text, full-scale, race-based DEI. When universities know their funding depends on demonstrating a DEI commitment, they behave accordingly, and students with dissenting viewpoints pay the price. We see that dynamic play out directly on campuses. One example comes from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, where administrators have repeatedly targeted conservative speech. Both campuses maintain nearly identical policies, but the Prescott, Arizona campus has enforced its version far more aggressively, once again proving that problematic speech codes don't exist on paper. Some institutions eagerly weaponize them. And importantly, Embry-Riddle is not a one-off. We have multiple campuses we would classify as repeat offenders, where administrators rely on the same vague discretionary rules to silence viewpoints they dislike. Our fall polling data underscores why this matters. Young voters today hold increasingly contradictory views about free speech. Many support the concept of free expression in theory, yet increasing numbers believe certain political views are harmful enough to justify suppression or even forceful resistance. When students arrive on campus believing political violence can be acceptable, and universities simultaneously model censorship rather than open debate, the result is a culture where suppressing speech feels not only acceptable but virtuous. We see this tension throughout the polling. Support for free speech is high, but support for protecting it when controversial views are involved drops sharply. The distortion of campus culture also appears in curriculum divisions. At Michigan State University, for instance, future educators are required to take a course built around race-centric ideology, an approach that assumes a particular political framework rather than encouraging students to evaluate competing perspectives. This is emblematic of a broader trend. Universities increasingly embed ideological content not just in student life, but in academic requirements. That leaves conservative students feeling isolated and pressured to conform. These cultural pressures have real legal consequences. At Davidson College, administrators allowed students to distribute inflammatory, Intifada-themed materials while blocking peaceful, rule-following YAF activists. Viewpoint discrimination is not just a policy dispute, it is a First Amendment violation. And even private schools are not permitted to enable racially charged discrimination. That's why YAF has requested a Department of Justice investigation. When a university permits extreme or violent conduct but suppresses mainstream conservative content, the disparity cannot be ignored. Finally, I want to highlight one more example that intersects directly with federal policy. In a recent OCR complaint involving Michigan State, we found clear indications that the university was attempting to circumvent executive orders issued by the administration, specifically those aimed at reducing compelled ideological programming and limiting DEI overreach. Instead of compliance, administrators appeared to be developing creative ways to maintain or disguise these policies. This behavior demonstrates why clarity, oversight, and enforcement at the federal level are essential. Universities should not be rewarded financially or reputationally for openly resisting federal directives. Taken together, these examples illustrate the broader challenge. Many institutions are no longer simply biased. They are structurally committed to suppressing dissent. The impact on students is profound, and the legal stakes are growing. YAF will continue advancing litigation, filing complaints, and empowering students like Courtney here who refuse to be silenced. But federal partners play a crucial role in ensuring these abuses do not continue unchecked. Thank you, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. There are a lot of institutions that are trying to get around this. There's even the American Association of Medical Colleges and Universities, when given an edict not to do this in medical school, their president point blank said, we're going to figure out a way to do around this. And that's what you see. So anyway, thank you. Courtney.
Thank you. As both a student and a campus leader, I firmly believe that freedom of speech is one of the most important principles for any university to uphold. While many universities proudly claim to be places of diverse views and rigorous discussion, it has become painfully clear to me that many universities are failing to uphold their own ideals. What is happening now on campuses like mine goes beyond ordinary disagreement. It is an environment shaped by ideological conformity, social hostility, and institutional bias. This hostility became unmistakable after Charlie Kirk was shot and killed on a college campus. The day of his assassination, one of our student newspapers released a video showing campus reactions. One person said that he would dance in the street to celebrate, and another remarked he should be happy he got shot. Chalkings on campus also echoed the celebration of his death. Even a few months later, violent posters appeared across our campus declaring, "The only good fascist is a dead one," and showing federal immigration agents being shot in the head. Perhaps most alarming of all, 35% of students at UW-Madison still believe in 2025 that violence is occasionally acceptable to stop someone from speaking on campus. Inside the classroom, this climate continues. Most assigned readings come from left-leaning scholars, and conservative perspectives are often portrayed very negatively. While I welcome the criticism of my own ideas, it becomes a problem when professors exclusively frame conservative viewpoints negatively and never subject the left to the same scrutiny. For example, an article I had to read in one of my history classes said that Republican elected officials are complicit in, quote, the rising tide of white power activity and its overt violent racism. Outside the classroom, suppression is even more visible. The Madison Federalist, our conservative student newspaper, has had entire stacks thrown away. Flyers for our events routinely get torn down, and our posters get defaced. In 2022, when YAF brought Matt Walsh to campus, protesters caused more than $30,000 in damage to the Memorial Union in an effort to pressure the speaker into silence. When YAF hosted Michael Knowles in 2024, the university attempted to impose a last-minute $4,000 security fee to protect us against angry liberal protesters. Only after we threatened to sue our own school did they back down. The pattern is unmistakable. Dissenters increasingly attempt to silence conservative ideas because they have found it is far easier to suppress opposing viewpoints than defend their own. While this act of suppression of free speech and debate is concerning, there is an even more serious threat to pluralism on our campuses, and that is self-suppression. 61% of Republican students in the UW system feel pressured by professors to conform to certain political positions, while 40% of all UW-Madison students recently self-censored according to FIRE. I want to emphasize, even I have found myself self-censoring, and I'm someone who is very outspoken about their beliefs. Yet when I sit in class and hear professors imply that conservatives are immoral, or I see my fellow peers openly celebrate the death of a conservative activist, dissenting does not feel like an option. One of the most common things I hear when I'm tabling for either YAF or college Republicans is that students want to join, but they are terrified of what would happen if their professors or peers found out. That should never happen at a public university that claims to value free and open dialogue. I would like to end with this. I am not asking universities to agree with my politics, only to recognize that every student's right to speak freely is worth protecting. Thank you for your time, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the discussion.
Thank you for your bravery, Courtney. The First Amendment was the First Amendment for a reason, right? Thank you for your bravery. Continue. So, thanks, Steve.
Well, thanks once again, Congressman Murphy, for convening this roundtable again, and thanks to all of you for being here. It's very heartening to see you taking an interest in this critical issue of free expression on our campuses, which is something that we need to attend to critically for the sake of the future of higher education, but for our country as a whole. For 30 years, ACTA has been working to improve academic excellence, academic freedom, and accountability on campuses across the nation. I work in particular on academic freedom. Protecting the freedom to teach and the freedom to learn on America's campuses requires constant vigilance, and there remains, of course, much room for improvement, although I agree with you, Congressman Murphy, that we are seeing some positive trends as of late, although those in the institutions aren't necessarily all going along willingly with those positive changes. We're grateful for the efforts that you, your colleagues, the current administration, and other lawmakers, including in the states, are making to improve what has become a very dire situation. It is not an easy task, but tackling DEI and discrimination, undertaking accreditation reform, and insisting on academic freedom and free speech on campus are things that we must do. At ACTA, we continue to believe that trustees who bear fiduciary responsibility for their institutions are key to reform. And through our Campus Freedom Initiative, which I direct, we are working with them and others to promote these positive changes on campus. We evaluate the policies and practices of these institutions against our gold standard for freedom of expression, which is a 20-point action plan. And we believe that if colleges and universities adopt these policies and practices, that it will create a framework that will promote free expression and intellectual and viewpoint diversity on campus, which we believe are critical. This year, we've published report cards examining public universities in Arizona and in Virginia, and we're continuing to publish analyses of other schools. Just yesterday, we published analyses of Brown University and Northwestern University. It's not uncommon for schools to score 10 or less out of 20 on our gold standard. Once we publish these results, we contact the universities, their leadership, make them aware of the results, and make recommendations for change so that they can hopefully reach 20 out of 20 someday on the gold standard. So far as I know, the best that we've seen, I won't name the school, but so far we've seen one school that had a 17 out of 20, but that is extremely rare from what we've seen so far. I think some people in higher education are starting to understand that there's a serious need for change. After the explosion of ideology and intolerance and disruptive behavior on campuses around the country in the wake of October 7th, I think many, many more people among the American public were awakened to just how bad things are on our campuses. I think people in the institutions see the data on public confidence in higher ed and how that's cratered, and I think they see the pressure that they're getting from lawmakers and groups like ACTA and other advocacy groups like those around the table. All of these people calling for change, they're finally starting to understand, and we do see that there are some leaders, for instance, the Chancellor of Vanderbilt University, the President of Dartmouth College is another. They are acknowledging the data on the lack of public confidence, and they are acknowledging that they should be, above all, institutions devoted to education and not to political activism or political advocacy. So I have more to add later, but I see my time is up, so I'll stop there.
Great, thank you. You highlight an important role, and that's the role of trustees. Sadly enough, at some institutions, the trustees are merely mirroring and reflection of the administration rather than, as we say, viewpoint diversity. And this is it's just an ending circle with that. So, for our administration has done a great job of pointing out the discriminatory practices of DEI, the horribleness that has happened on campuses. So, really welcome your thoughts, and thank you again for making time to come with us, Jonathan.
Well, thank you, Congressman Murphy, for the invitation to address today's roundtable. It's a real privilege to be here, an honor to address members and the reformers around the table. I think many of us have been working to reform our universities for many years because we all agree that they're some of the most important institutions in American society. That's why this administration has expended so much energy working to restore them to their truth-seeking mission. Now, I don't have to argue in this room that our universities have progressively abandoned their commitment to free inquiry. What I want to underline is that DEI is the force behind everything chilling campus speech today. Biased response teams, academic cancellation, safe spaces, forbidden word lists, shutdowns, violent disruptions, required courses in gen ed, ideological tests in hiring, tenure, and promotion, and the capture of entire departments and disciplines. When the Trump administration took office, major public universities were spending up to $25 million a year on DEI. That's $250 million over a decade, enough to change every positive and negative incentive on a university campus. So what has the Trump administration done to provoke the U-turn we need on these issues? We have sought to create an accountability environment in which rapid change, driven primarily by those closest to campus, is suddenly possible. We have also provided a general roadmap for the reforms we think will restore higher education to a truth-seeking and country-serving mission. The accountability environment starts with civil rights enforcement. The last administration used its settlements under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act to push more DEI onto campuses. We look to students to be Harvard as our North Star and put universities on notice that they cannot use race to give pluses in admissions or preferentially allocate other benefits and advantages. The same is true of Title IX. The last administration used a protection designed to ensure equal educational opportunity for women to instead advance a poisonous transgender ideology. The result, schools compelled faculty and students to use untrue pronouns that violated their speech and free exercise rights. We have reversed this too and we are enforcing Title IX as written to protect women and girls. We are also reshaping how the agency invests in education. In the last administration, 4 of the Secretary's 6 grant priorities drove DEI into our classrooms. That's billions of dollars every year funding programs that teach students to embrace racial stereotypes. This kills free thinking and teaches young people to prejudge everything, including each other, based on identity ideology. We have now reviewed every grant and grant program at the agency. Instead of funding a divisive ideology, this administration will support programs that improve teaching and learning, including civil discourse in our most recent FIPSE competition. Accreditor standards relating to DEI in particular are one of the main reasons our campuses are so broken and so ideological. We have ended the last administration's moratorium on new accreditor recognition, approved requests by universities to change accreditors, and we are building new accountability structures. Finally, a word about the Compact for Excellence in Higher Education, the roadmap I mentioned earlier. Behind closed doors, we often hear from presidents, board chairs, and even the occasional faculty senator that they love 85% of it. The dishonest, hyperventilating media coverage has actually had a very positive side effect. It has spotlighted that this administration is fighting for popular, common-sense reforms, non-discrimination in admissions and hiring, viewpoint diversity in civil discourse, institutional neutrality, academic rigor, protecting women's sports and spaces, lowering tuition and improving ROI, and reducing foreign influence in higher education. Who, outside of the faculty lounge or legacy media, thinks any of these proposals are bad ideas? Compact principles map the U-turn that Americans want from the institutions that they fund. Universities that embrace these reforms will not just be reorienting toward free inquiry and truth-seeking, they will be improving the education they deliver to students, advancing the national interest, and restoring Americans' confidence in higher education.
That's excellent. You know, I like to use the phrase that DEI is the greatest peer pressure event since the Spanish Inquisition. We just don't burn people at the stake. They just ostracize them and cancel them these days. You point out a very good point that the accreditors are a real problem. And when colleges and universities, medical schools, et cetera, throw their hands up and just say, you know, plaintively, well, the accreditors are making us do this. Well, in part, that's true. So going after some of those agents, also removing funding, is going to be critical. I think we're making a difference. Sadly enough, a lot have gone underground, but I appreciate very, very much what you guys are doing and what the Trump administration is trying to bring back balance. Whoever thought balance was a bad thing? But thank you. Mr. Aguilar.
Thank you, Congressman Murphy, and thank you for organizing this roundtable discussion. Unfortunately, American colleges and universities continue to suppress free inquiry and discussion, impose far-left ideologies on students, and use race in admissions. I'm encouraged, however, by the efforts of the Trump administration to address these challenges. President Trump's executive orders and the administration's proposals, such as the Compact for Academic Excellence in Higher Education, the administration's investigations and legal actions have sparked a much-needed conversation about the role of higher education in America. Although it's disheartening that schools need reminders to hire and promote faculty based on talent rather than racial or ethnic characteristics, or to admit students based on merit rather than ideology, we hope the administration's actions will create the momentum necessary for positive change in academia. Change will not come easily, as the left is determined to maintain its hold over academia. Self-censorship is rampant among students and faculty who fear repercussions for expressing their views or asking challenging questions. Many colleges have adopted speech-related policies under the guise of preventing harassment and bias, which limit legitimate expression and often penalize statements that contradict prevailing leftist dogma. Many others have implemented so-called bias response teams to encourage students to report incidents of offensive speech, leading to intimidation and discouraging others from expressing similar opinions. Moreover, in colleges and universities where most professors are left-leaning, students fear their grades will suffer if they express contrary opinions. According to a report from the Education Freedom Institute, 93% of political donations made by college professors went to Democrats. The sad reality is that today, American institutions of higher education and their accreditors remain committed to indoctrinating students with a divisive, culturally Marxist narrative that portrays the country as inherently racist and its democratic institutions as systemically oppressive. At Defending Education, we recently released a report exposing how the Council on Social Work Education, the sole accreditor of social work schools in the U.S., requires the integration of anti-racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion, ADEI, throughout bachelor's and master's degrees programs. Another recent report highlights the University of Minnesota Twin Cities Culture and Family Lab, which advances the concept of a whiteness pandemic, claiming that Western culture and the family system perpetuate systemic racism. Additionally, colleges continue to use race in their admissions processes, violating anti-discrimination statutes and the recent Supreme Court ruling in Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard. A few months ago, Defending Education filed a federal complaint against Indiana University for discriminating based on race by giving scholarship preferences to African American and Native American students. Restoring American academia to its former state will undoubtedly require significant effort. Congress can actually play a crucial role in this session by passing legislation that addresses fairness in accreditation and mandates colleges to provide more detailed information about their incoming student classes to ensure that race-based preferences are not being used in admission process. Taking back our institutions of higher education is frankly absolutely necessary for the survival of our democracy. We cannot allow colleges co-opted by the left to teach our young men and women to hate America and to turn them into activists to transform our country into something unrecognizable. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's exactly what's happening. Yep. They're teaching people to hate this country. So thank you. Excellent report. John, thank you.
Thanks again for this excellent discussion. Our alumni group, Davidsonians for Freedom of Thought and Discourse, DFTD for short, has been the driving force for reforms at Davidson since 2018, and Congressman Murphy was key in getting us going at that time. It hasn't been an easy ride. We started by asking that the college adopt the Chicago principles of freedom of expression and make them a feature of campus life. We were ignored, scorned, and vilified, literally. But after 3 years of pushing back, the Board of Trustees and faculty finally in 2021 did adopt a statement, which is pretty good. We encourage students to organize a Davidson Free Speech Alliance and bring speakers to campus with viewpoints at odds with the prevailing left-wing ideology that dominates the college. That effort has been borne fruit, with the result that speakers, luminaries like economist Art Laffer, General Jack Keane are now appearing at Davidson, as does Congressman Murphy. That's progress. With our encouragement, chapters of YAF and college Republicans have sprung back to life at Davidson, and we're really pleased that just recently we now have a Turning Point USA chapter on campus. Once again, progress. Perhaps most important has been DFTD's watchdog function at Davidson. The trustees are not watchdogs. Actually, we are essentially the watchdogs for the college. In 2020, we conducted the first survey of Davidson students, and Jonathan played a key role in getting that going, which showed that 2/3 of students at Davidson speech suppressed and are afraid to speak their mind on controversial issues or at all. We encourage students to alert us to issues and incidents that we should take to the college administration for addressing. As a result, mandated CRT race theory indoctrination sessions no longer occur, Thanks to Steve who helped on that. And to a large degree, the course syllabi have been purged, not completely, but it's hard for us to tell, of subject-irrelevant CRT content. Some progress there. And we have developed a sometimes tense, but nonetheless meaningful working relationship with Davidson's president. Changes don't occur immediately, and there's no acknowledgement of our role when they do happen, but they are happening gradually. It's incremental. As an example of the progress we've made just recently, I couldn't believe this happened, the Chicago Principles of Freedom of Expression, there's now a large framed, elegant, in the main administration building on the wall of the College of Freedom of Expression statement. Can't believe it happened. That's symbolic, but I think it is some indication of glacial cultural change. But problems remain. This has already been brought up by Gabby earlier. On September 5th, two fine recent graduates of Davidson, Hannah Fay and Cynthia Wong, filed a civil rights complaint with the Department of Education and the Department of Justice against the college. While at Davidson, they experienced obstruction from college administrators in organizing conservative groups and events. Most seriously, after distributing pamphlets countering the anti-Israel hype of the pro-Hamas campus left, they were charged by the college with making students feel threatened and unsafe and advocating Islamophobia. No such action was taken by Davidson against students hanging an enormous pro-Hamas banner on the columns of the main administration building. Hannah Fay and Cynthia Wong were threatened with discipline and thus the civil rights suit that has been filed, complaint that's been filed. Our alumni group lobbies at Davidson continuously for institutional neutrality and for ideological diversification of faculty and trustees, but we've made no progress on that front. Absolute no. But we'll keep at that lobbying. All of this is to say how crucial the administration's and Congress's campaign against the rot in higher education is. Our elite higher ed institutions, with rare exceptions, are dominated by people whose goal is to undermine the culture of excellence, merit, and free inquiry that made this country great and indeed created Western civilization. The stakes in this struggle are monumental, and we should never forget this. Make no mistake, we are fighting for the future of our country and for a Western civilization. With the Trump administration's focus on education reform and congressional legislation and your use of the investigatory powers, this has been a truly breakthrough year for us. Really, really rewarding. But politics being what it is, our window of opportunity could be limited, and we have to face that. So we must build on the momentum that we now have. Times are wasting, especially private education institutions are essentially accountable to no one. Alumni organizations like DFTD, Princeton's, and so on have brought a measure of accountability in some cases, but this isn't enough. We need the power of Congress and the executive branch to win this battle, and I encourage continued bold action on your part. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you for all your hard work, and I don't think it would have happened with the college's last administration. Seen some glimmer of hope with this administration, but there's, as you point out, a lot of more work to be done and continued pressure. So thank you. Richard.
Thank you, Congressman, and thank you for the opportunity to participate in the discussion today. As John said, DFTD, Davidsonians for Freedom of Thought and Discourse, is an alumni group of loyal alumni that love the college and want to see it come back to a balanced educational institution. We are not affiliated with the college. We're independent alumni. We are committed to ensuring a learning environment for students at the college that is ideologically balanced and promotes lively and fearless freedom of expression. And we're dedicated to protecting the free speech rights of Davidson students. And we strongly oppose the DEI encroachment upon free speech by the progressive secular ideology and moral relativism that has captured much of the faculty and the administration at the college. And such encroachment is documented by independent surveys of Davidson students by the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, FIRE, and one recently conducted by the prestigious Manhattan Institute. These surveys unequivocally establish that students at Davidson do not feel free to express themselves in the classroom, due in large part to the lingering, corrosive, and toxic effects of progressive DEI-centered policies. Something the college, to its credit, has moderated, but something that still exists and threatens free speech. At DFTD, we are also concerned about the value of the education students are receiving. In the past, typically based on Judeo-Christian values, but increasingly a more secular ideology today. We fear that current Davidson students do not experience the richness and academic rigor once required for a more classic liberal arts education, and we're concerned about the ever-rising tuition cost and fees associated with the more secular progressive curriculum being offered today. Just last month, the president of the college announced a 6.5% annual increase in tuition costs, raising such costs to an astronomical $92,500 per year. Such costs obviously pose a barrier to middle and lower income families, which have long been a staple of the college, to even apply to the college. Now, while the college strives to meet 100% of documented need to those that do apply and are admitted through non-recourse grants and scholarships, this is not always possible in reality. And we're also concerned about the lingering pernicious effects of the continuing focus on DEI policies. The rising tuition costs I've just cited are very likely due to the administrative bloat associated with DEI, social engineering, as well as resources wasted on nonsensical courses focused on false anthropology, gender identity issues, rather than on more critical areas of study. And grade inflation has become a problem. In an apparent desire to promote equity for all, suddenly, many more students than historically have been the case are making A's and have very, very high GPAs. And this equitable grade inflation is wrong, and it hurts the reputation of the college, long known for its academic integrity. These policies obviously mislead employers and hurts all students. Indeed, softening expectations for the students diminishes work ethic and academic rigor, and we believe softened expectations hurt minority students the most. They are entitled to a vigorous curriculum which will stretch their potential, not limit it. So as John pointed out, some progress has been made at Davidson College, but work remains to be done as demonstrated by the surveys, which are repetitive. They always show the same thing. The Manhattan Institute, Davidson's got a score of 51% out of 100 on free speech issues. So we thank again the members of the committee for allowing us to participate in this discussion. The committee's work is vital to protecting the free speech of all students, and we appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Great. Thank you very, very much. Noah, happy to hear what's going on from you guys' viewpoint.
Yeah, thank you. I come to you today to offer my perspective on the state of free speech on college campus. Universities were once the arenas of open debate, intellectual curiosity, and genuine dissent. Yet many campuses have drifted into an environment where students with conservative or Christian viewpoints feel silenced, judged, or even punished for speaking their minds. This approach is anti-freedom, it's anti-education, and it's anti-American. For many of America's college students, free speech, even free thought, is no longer a guarantee. It is something that they must fight for every single day. Thankfully, students are fighting back, and the leading force in that fight is the organization I work for, Turning Point USA. Turning Point USA believes that without open debate, there is no learning, no growth, and no freedom. Turning Point USA does more than simply offer students persuasive ideas. It seeks to model the discourse and intellectual dialogue that once made our country great. Today, our movement includes 1,400 college chapters nationwide, and that's 1,400 groups of students that are every day determined to create opportunities for open dialogue, critical conversations, and genuine expressions of free speech on campus. Turning Point is not reacting to the problem, we are leading the charge to fix it. Our chapters are expanding the marketplace of ideas, holding universities accountable, and rebuilding a culture of open debate that higher education desperately needs. These students build diverse communities of thought that universities no longer appear to value, communities where students can question, disagree, and learn from one another. And they do it under conditions where they are often mocked, protested, or ignored. On campuses, conservatives face obstacles that are unimaginable to others. Disinvited speakers, vandalized displays, threats, harassment, and administrative pressure designed to deter them from sharing their beliefs. Yet they keep going. Our late founder, Charlie Kirk, understood this better than anyone. He built Turning Point USA on a simple but powerful philosophy. If you want free speech, you must practice free speech. A tent on campus, a microphone, an open challenge, prove me wrong. There is no clearer picture of free expression than that. Charlie championed the idea that every student has the right to speak, even if the speech is controversial, even if it's unpopular, even if it makes others uncomfortable. As he said, if you only support free speech when you agree with it, you don't believe in free speech. Charlie poured his life into this mission, and his legacy lives on in the students who now carry that torch. So this is what Congress must do. Higher education shapes the worldview of the next generation more than any other institution. If we permit censorship and ideological conformity to take root, we endanger an entire generation. Congress must ensure that universities receiving public funding uphold the principles of free expression, not speech for some, but speech for all. And I urge Congress to take action and hold universities accountable where they fail to protect open dialogue and viewpoint diversity. Our students deserve institutions that uphold the First Amendment. In closing, as we move forward, I ask you to stand with the students who refuse to be silenced. I ask that you hold these restrictive administrators accountable. Stand with the idea that truth emerges only when ideas collide. If we lose free speech, we lose everything. And I can assure you, Turning Point USA will not back down, and we will never surrender.
Thank you, Noah. And it's one thing that the left, sadly enough, since Charlie Kirk's assassination, has said that he only cared about one viewpoint. How many times can you go on and see his thing and say, well, we just disagree?
Right.
It's great to have the conversation. Thank you. I'm going to have to leave. I've got to go try to work with the speaker on some healthcare issues. I'm turning things over to my abled and much better looking Burgess Owens, but I want to say thank you all very, very much. I deeply, deeply appreciate all the hard work that you're doing, especially you guys that are on the front line. This is critical for our nation's future. And so thank you all very, very much. Thank you, Burgess.
Say this before Greg leaves. It's great to see someone's at the tip of the spear. That's great. We talk on the floor. This is top of mind. So thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate everything you do. Really do. Okay, Macy.
All right, thank you guys. I'm honored to be here, and I'm honored to have been entrusted with giving a voice to the hundreds of thousands of other TPUSA students out there just like me. Thank you to the leaders at Turning Point, not just for this opportunity, but for every way your organization has lifted me up, emboldened me, and given me a voice throughout everything I'm about to share. All glory to God, and I hope I can honor Charlie Kirk's name and all those who have gone before me. Frankly, calling it higher education, especially at St. Mary's College, where I'm a senior, is a misnomer at best. Let me show you. Here is a picture of our very first meeting, my freshman year. From day one, we were stuck in hiding in back, dusty classrooms of abandoned back hallways. My sophomore year, I found out that there was a policy. By the way, this is an all-women's college. They were bringing about a policy to admit transgender women. Here are the flyers that we created in protest. It's a Bible verse. Here are pictures of the university telling officials to take them down, even though they were approved. And for reference, here was the poster that was approved in support of the policy. Here we have another picture of a protest that was allowed. Meanwhile, on this exact same green, our pro-life club tried doing a similar protest to commemorate lives lost to abortion. They were not allowed to do that. However, this Palestine protest was allowed. I have a picture of my friend getting called a racial slur for being conservative. I have more and more pictures of death threats, endless harassment, again and again and again. A syllabus claiming students have to reject biological reality to succeed. Again and again. Blasphemy, anti-conservative bias for 4 years. 4 years, my entire undergraduate time, this is what I've had to endure. 4 years of begging for Turning Point USA recognition, only to be ignored or denied again and again because Charlie Kirk was bigoted and hateful. 4 years as the lone conservative on campus, fighting for every terrified student too scared to speak. And 4 years of death threats, bullying, harassment, mockery, and intimidation from students, professors, and administrators. This isn't just my story. This is actually the story of every single conservative who's walked the campus of St. Mary's, because every single conservative has faced systematic viewpoint discrimination under President Katie Conboy's failed leadership. The reason I come here so angry today is because this isn't just my case, and this isn't just the case at St. Mary's. This is actually the state of the entirety of U.S. higher education. There are thousands more just like me who are held captive to the same ideological occupation at universities across the nation. This is why I fight, and this is why I am here. There are far too many students living in silent submission out of fear of their grades, their future, and even their safety, because we all saw the armies of professors and students alike who cheered and clapped when Charlie Kirk was assassinated. They cheered on his death, and we see in the scary reality that they're going to do the same for us as well. We cannot let this continue. I mean, universities ought to be ashamed of themselves. We've forgotten the one thing college is actually supposed to be about, the free exchange of ideas. That's why Turning Point USA is the most important movement in America today. TPUSA arms young conservatives with the courage, the tools, and the unbreakable community they need to stand up when the entire system wants them broken and silenced. Charlie Kirk built an army of truth tellers, and every chapter they plant is on the front lines fighting against the indoctrination machine. TPUSA should be on every single college campus today. Any university denying a chapter is the university exposing its own illegitimacy. Let me close by zooming out even more. If you hear nothing else from me today, hear me when I say this. These left-wing indoctrination camps aren't just silencing conservatives, they're robbing every single student on campus of the intellectual diversity they were promised. Conservatives, liberals, and everyone in between are getting cheated out of a real, honest education. This isn't about right versus left. This is about giving every student the fair, fearless, wide-open marketplace of ideas they deserve. We must do everything we can to restore educational integrity in the United States and prevent any more stories like mine from ever happening again. Thank you.
Thank you, Macy. I really appreciate that. As you guys were kind of explaining and kind of giving your views, I kind of look at it very simply. Think about and remember what our country is all about. It's always from the very beginning. It's faith, family, the free market, and education. What do the Marxists do? They're anti-faith, family, the free market, and education. So we truly are fighting for our culture. And those who have began our country with those basic tenets, you know what they all had in common? A culture of courage. I cannot say enough, Mace, what you just mentioned, all glory to God. To begin that process of having the courage to say that is really what we're losing. And once we lose that, then everything else kind of falls apart. So that being said, I wanted to maybe just go some questions for Randy and I and myself. What we know is that Marxists are bullies. What we know is that Marxists are godless, and they are relentless. As excited as we are about freedom, as much as we think about our legacy for our kids, that there's hope, that there's a better country, they think just as deeply and as tenaciously about destroying that. So that's what we're really dealing with. And so the question really comes down to how do we deal with this? Understand that evil never sleeps. Yes, they will retreat if you start taking away their power and their finances. But how do we destroy it? How do we end this process? Well, we'll never end it. We'll always be fighting. That's I think that's the message you also have to keep in mind. This is an everlasting, eternal fight. But in the meanwhile, how do we, at this point, save our nation, our culture for our kids so they can then take up the fight as these young people are doing and moving forward? And so that's really my first question. Yeah, we know that we have within our institutions an ideology that's been around for a long, long time. You know, it took Charlie Kirk, took October 7th for us to finally kind of come to the front and begin to say we need to fight this. What do we do when we have very, very much entrenched in these universities people who hate our nation at the very top, that have no problem bullying and destroying people's lives, and they just, as they come through, they just sit there very safe because they will never get fired. So I guess that would be my question. Is this something that's a little deeper than just passing a law here and there? Is how do we deal with the fact that we have within our system something so deep and so, I like little termites. Is there any way that you can see that we can kind of deal with it? I think, first of all, thank goodness for President Trump and Secretary McMahon, they understand the power of education and letting parents have more of an option at the lower places. So, but what any suggestions, any things you guys might think of that we can kind of do to deal with the intrinsic process we have here?
If you give me about 2 minutes, I'd like to give you 2 case study the stuff you're going through is at every campus. And let me explain what AFSA does. I said we're boots on the ground. We're the wingmen for these kids. We would have stepped in. Ironic you're a Catholic college, by the way, for all the stuff you're putting up with. I'll give you 2 quick examples. 2000, after the George Floyd riots, it was happening in Charlottesville. If you've ever been there, it's a college town. A young woman, first-year student, was turning a corner downtown, which is about 3 blocks in Charlottesville, slammed on her brakes, came up against an orange cone, which is key to the story. She almost hit the kids who were protesting. She rolled down her window, said to the construction worker, "Thank God you were there. These kids would have been speed bumps." She meant that as thank you. One of the protesters heard that, said it was a racial epithet, reported her to the student-run judiciary committee, tried to get her kicked out of school because there's a theoretical honor code at UVA, which is a one-way street. Went to the EOCR department. They threw it out as baseless. This kept going. We found out about it. One of our founders, who was a decorated 27-year Navy fighter pilot, 110 combat missions, and a law degree from UVA in undergrad. He's not afraid of too many people. He went to the president, not suing, very politically correct, went to him and said, "Throw this out. This is ruining her record. Every time you Google her name, this comes up." Every day she was getting threatened on social media, physically threatened. He did nothing. So we finally arranged for a local lawyer to represent her, and she settled out of court. That's example 1. Fast forward, fall of 23, Israeli-American joint citizen kid, great guy. I've gotten to know him, know his father. I was then president of TJC. Had a very quiet protest. The Students for Justice in Palestine and Faculty for Justice in Palestine, between them, have about 400 members at UVA. They were demonstrating on the lawn. If you know that at UVA, it's Jefferson's thing that he founded. 300 of them screaming, waving Palestinian flags, river to the sea, all the usual garbage. Matan Goldstein, and this is public, so I can say names, stood off to the side, didn't say a word, very quietly, and he's a pretty imposing kid. He's 6'2", he's not a small guy. Israeli flag, yarmulke, Star of David, didn't say a word. They walked up to him, physically attacked him, yanked the flag away. Thank God a faculty member in the undergrad business school who happens to be Jewish saw this, said, "Back off." They accused him. He went through the Maxian system. They did nothing. Again, nothing. Then the guy that organized the SJP rally accused him of an honor violation, tried to get him kicked out of school. The faculty member went to him and said, "If you accuse him of an honor violation, I was there, you'll get kicked out, you're lying." The student again went to the school. He was getting every single day social media, getting harassed in class. Nothing happened. We went to the same lawyer that helped the girl, Morgan Beckinger, and he had to sue and settle out of court. So the reason I'm going into that, we don't sue, nor should we. But if things happen like happened to you at St. Mary's, happens at every single college, if you have an AFSA chapter, you have adults in charge who give a damn. And we will not allow that to happen. We will intercede. And we work with FAIR, we work with FIRE, we work with groups like that, and where appropriate, we'll arrange for legal action. That's not what we want. We go through the normal venues, but we don't let it happen, Congressman. And that's it, but I wanted to give you 2 real-life studies, because I know them well. There are other anecdotes like that, but that's why we're here, to help the kids and the faculty.
I have a question for all of you. I'm not going to bother to turn this thing on again. Obviously, this story is to show all of your perspective just how bad it is. So you happen to be talking to 2 people who theoretically can change the law, and I've got to leave in 15 minutes. I would love if anyone in 10 seconds or less, if we could pass a law that would help with these problems. We can sit around and talk about them all we want. We can try to fix them. If we could pass a bill that would help with these issues, what would it be? And if you can't tell it in 10 seconds or less, it's probably too complicated. Does anybody have any ideas of something that we could do to help solve the problem?
If you were to reauthorize the Higher Education Act and put criteria for academic freedom and free speech on campus into the standards that accreditors look for, that would be extremely helpful. I think it would build on some of the things that the administration is currently doing and make those changes more long-lasting.
So what does that mean? Standards for free speech. Anywhere you must have free speech. It doesn't mean anything. So.
Well, the accrediting agencies, if you look at the standards that many of them have now, or at least did until recently, many of them mention diversity, equity, and inclusion more often than they do academic freedom or free speech on campus. And I can say, as a former professor myself who was at an institution that went through accreditation, I've seen firsthand how these standards are used, not just by the accreditors, but by colleagues within the institution to pressure everyone to go along with DEI. So,
another way to do that could be alternative accreditation, which actually is a bill that I have. If you take away the monopoly on the accreditors, then you can manage it. Okay, so that's
excellent as well. Yes.
Accreditation. Anybody else have another idea?
I would just add that I do think your accreditation bill is right on target, that we've got to do something about the accreditors. Like at Davidson on the grade inflation, for example. It's rampant. Harvard has 60% or magna cum laude. You know all that. Well, so why aren't the accreditors? Should we not have some sort of standard tests for graduates? If you want to graduate from college, you have to have passed this test. Great. So going after the accreditors, I think, is a very important thing.
I saw somebody over here. Yeah. Quick idea, and then.
I would echo everything that we've said earlier, but I do think that following through on threats to pull federal funding as universities and colleges fail to uphold basic freedoms of speech is actually ideal. And even more than that, because after all, we're filing lawsuits constantly, and a lot of them we win. But when we publicize that the most, when people are actually aware of that, et cetera, that's when other universities take note, and that's when actual consequences are had. I think it's largely a matter of demonstrating the failures of these universities when they lose lawsuits and such. I think that's where the vast majority of efforts actually come from. But following through on threatening to pull federal funding is key.
I think something very simple to ensure that universities comply with students v. Harvard is mandating that colleges and universities provide more information about the students that they're admitting to ensure that they're not using race or sex in admissions. The administration has been updating their databases to ensure they have that information, to ensure that that universities are complying with the law, but obviously it's this administration. I think we have to ensure that we put that into law. That would be, I think, something pretty simple, and should perhaps even get Democrat support. I don't know.
I last night was just looking at how these colleges begin to change their ways a little bit, and it always comes down to funding. Right now, Harvard is now fighting to get back billions of dollars that has been put on hold right now. You have Northwestern, $75 million was frozen. It's just been restored, $750, because they came around and started acting a little bit more normal. Cornell has $30 million and now have committed to agriculture so they can make sure that the farmers are getting the innovation they need. A part of it, again, keep in mind, follow the money. You can always dictate, and particularly Marxists. They care about power and profit. And by the way, that's why I love what Turning Point is doing. You have to understand, at the end of the day, it all comes down to this culture is something that it began back at being 50 years ago, but it comes down to keeping our kids, make sure our kids understand what it really comes down to and what it means, and they have to follow that through. So the fact that we're getting patriotism back with our young people, and I think this coming year, just my thought, this coming year, you're going to see so many great things happening here in D.C. We're celebrating our country, celebrating our culture. We're talking about classical work again, and our kids now are getting bolder about the way they stand, and it's becoming almost contagious. It's becoming cool again to be patriotic. So I think the biggest thing that we can do is make sure our kids are empowered to do what they're doing right now. We have a remarkable chairman, Tim Walberg, and he looks at education as our A committee, which it should be. No matter what else we do, my friends, no matter how well we seal the border, take care of inflation, all that stuff, if we lose our kids' ability to think, to have conversations, then we truly lose our culture. So just to make that point, to that point, I have with the free speech process. Again, that's something we're working on in the college system. Are there ways that we can, and I think Randy just talked about this a little bit, are there ways that we can actually, from our side, keep a close eye on that, keep people accountable, or is it something that just has to happen from people not showing up on campus anymore? Where do we find that balance of us here in D.C. trying to push the process of free speech, but it really has to come to a sense for people understanding to have the freedom and courage to do so? Yes.
I speak on behalf of an alumni organization, and Tom represents AFSA, which is an umbrella alumni organizations. I think it's a multifaceted approach here. We have grown our reach and our subscriber base. As I said, we had about 1,400 on our email list. Now we have 16,000. That's just over a year. So we broadened our reach in ways that seem very ambitious. And we've done that in conjunction with Princeton, for example, reporting that their annual alumni giving participation rates have been lower than it has been in years. So that's, to us, a clear sign of alumni unhappiness. And so when groups then come in and fill the gap, like the Davidsonians, like the Princetonians, the AFSA groups, we can come in and fill the gaps, and we're offering an alternate perspective and a place to fund and invest organizations like ours that are really doing grassroots, boots on the ground free speech on campuses there. So I'm not saying that alumni groups are the only solution, but I think we are one solution. And following the trends of what's happening with the colleges, I think that's really impactful. We're looking for ways to perhaps carve out groups of people who are donors to Princeton, who also might be donors to PFS, for example, and saying, hey, here's a way that you can direct your giving in a more unique and impactful way, and we're impacting free speech freshman orientation programming and other things that they might be more interested in that are within the traditional university structure.
Randy has to take off. Do you have any last statement before you?
No, I get to go be the speaker now, so I have to go. But thank all of you for being here. Anna from my office will stay if any of you have anything that you want to follow up. But he's the best, and we're committed to working on these issues for you. I have a selfish reason. I'm about to send one of mine off into the thing. But I also know it can get better. I don't think any of you are here from a Florida public university, and I think that we've shown it. I was in charge of education when I was in the Florida legislature. I did it for 8 years, and I think that there is a path to go where you can solve these problems. I would say if we can just make America Florida, everything will be fine. But we're committed to work with you on all this stuff, and I apologize.
Thank you, Randy. We're going to yes, go ahead.
Congressman Fine leaves, I'd just like to say we were delighted and acted to see that the University of Florida and the University of West Florida both adopted institutional neutrality in the last couple of weeks.
Where I got them fired.
We're kind of tying down. I have actually one quick question, if we can handle this real quickly, and then I have a final thought about the opportunity of kids not all going to the same route of higher ed, and realizing that's going to be a benefit to us also. But when it comes down to probably the biggest thing we're beginning to realize is the anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
I know it's a long conversation. I know it's been a long time coming. I know DEI is at the crux of this. What can we do as legislators? Do you have any ideas that we can kind of, other than giving voice like we did last year, what can we do to really dig in deeper to make sure we get rid of this cancer that has kind of been working for a long time against us? Any ideas on that piece?
Very quick point. I already referenced this. Students for Justice in Palestine is funded by Middle Eastern terrorist groups. Period. End of discussion.
Yeah.
Go after them.
Yeah.
Because those are the guys that are fomenting the anti-Semitism. We've seen it at UVA. We've seen it across the board. You got to ban them, and you can do that but follow the money. And just a quick point on his question.
Congressman, to that point, we need the Senate to pass the Deterrent Act. The House passed the Deterrent Act. and that's for foreign donations to colleges and universities. We got, I think, 30 Democrat votes in the House.
So it's still stuck in the Senate.
We're stuck in the Senate. We're going to make a push to see if we can get some Democrats to support it, but I think it would go a long way to find out where the money's coming from and what exactly they're asking universities to do for that money.
Real fast, effectuating change. Funding's important, accreditation important, it still insulates the president. You've got to pass a law that makes it a misdemeanor or a felony if the president violates intellectual. Now, I'm not a lawyer, I'm an MBA. But they don't care. They're making $1 million a year. They can coast for 4 years. Hold them accountable, just like in a company. The CEO gets fired. If you don't fire the president, he or she does not care.
Well, we're kind of coming to an end here. I'll say this. Just always look back and realize that we are part of history. This has been going on, and I think talk to my colleagues, there's only three terms for me, how long they've been dealing with this stuff and not been able to really address it because we never had the right combination of power. We have a president in place right now, and we have a Secretary of Education who understands these issues. We have an America First Senate, Congress, and a president. Now's the time to think outside the box. If I can say one thing, now's the time that we can really come together and really focus, sprint to get some of these things taken care of because our kids really need it. We have a generation coming behind us that truly wants to pick up the banner and move with this. We just have to show them what that looks like, what it is to hustle, what it is to come out off the sideline, and no matter what our talents might be, to be part of this process. And one last thing, now that we have our kids realizing that everybody doesn't have to go to a 4-year college, it's powerful, guys. Some kids just want to roll up their sleeves, go to work, start a business, build their business, and they will be America First big time. They'll appreciate the process of hard work, merit, and merit is what it's all about. If we ever lose that, we've lost everything our country has stood for. So we're getting back to that. I just want to thank you guys again for being at the table. I mean, not just here, but literally making sure you're a part of this conversation. Is there ever a time for us to say we were part of history, look back and tell our kids, great-grandkids, we were there when our country almost went over that edge. We were there, we sit at the table, talk about how we make things change, how we get our kids looking at each other from inside out, not outside in, getting back to we the people being a more perfect union. All those things we can do now, but we have to be just very aggressive with it. So I just want to thank you for what you're doing. This is just the beginning, and just know that the next 3 years is going to be pretty exciting for us. I really believe that. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.